Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy Sunday. Want to stop by and say a little hello, check in, see how you're doing. Whew. There's a lot of crazy business going on out there, yeah? And today I wanted to talk to you about full concept of self in a way to give you a model that might empower you as you navigate the world out there every day. So really when you think about consciousness, the container that we live in, it is what gives us our life experience, the ability to have this conversation, to listen, to enjoy a beautiful day, to enjoy a sunset. It's consciousness itself. But a lot of times the world reduces us down to this material world. But things are never ever just one thing, right? So we are a material body, but we're also consciousness, which is abstract. And then you have the scientists who say, well, consciousness is a product of the nervous system, the biochemistry in the brain. And that may be, but there's also something larger. Many traditions across the world have had names for it in regards to life force, prana, chi, the Holy Spirit. As many traditions, there are names. And this is the eternal aspect of us. And this is where it gets a little shady, right? Because there are some people that are atheist or agnostic who will probably just stop listening when they hear the idea of the spirit and eternal existence. But and which is a disservice to many people, because there is this life principle that doesn't belong to any tradition, any religion, any group of people. It's not a possession. It's the intelligence of life itself. And because our logical mind lacks the ability to contain it, and I like to explain this to my students and my clients as, Russian dolls, levels of consciousness. So you have your ghost body, which includes your nervous system. But we also have our mental body, which is a different container. Like the physical body can't fit into the mental body, although it houses the mental body. And then from there we have the higher consciousness, which you could say is the observer, which is self-awareness. It observes consciousness. So this gives us the ability to observe our own mind working. So this observer is contained in the mind, but the mind cannot be contained in the observer. So these are degrees of refinement of consciousness, from gross to subtle to the causal. And in yogic philosophy, anyway, the way they call this a fourth level, which is the non-dual. And that's where self-consciousness ends, and it is held in all conscious, the unity principle. Some people call this God, some people call it, there's lots of names, right? I'm not going to go through them all right now. In science, this is called the field, or the quantum field. It contains all possibility. And so we have been given a very limited view of consciousness based on the Newtonian physics, where there's this material world and we are actors on it, but not necessarily part of it. And this has been the greatest disservice, because as quantum scientists and physics has found, is that below the visible world is the subatomic world or reality that has a whole different set of laws, and everything is actually frequency and vibration, and that everything that you see as being real and material is actually 99.9% empty space. And then we see our minds, our hardware, I should say, that our mind, our hardware acts as a receiver for, right? And we're downloading tons of bits of information per second, like we are a quantum computer. And our brains are processing that information, and the processing filter is determined on lots of things. That filter is shaped by our upbringing, what we were taught to believe, our fears, our hopes, our dreams, and all of this is conditioned from our environments around us. Whether it's based in the reality with a capital R, that whatever we focus our attention on becomes real for us, because as quantum computers we are creating our reality from moment to moment. But they don't tell you this in school, they don't tell you this in church, and really what it has been for me is a process of observation, self-observation, and of course reading and learning all different types of traditions, and starting to begin to embody all those levels of awareness as not separate but one. And the minute you give yourself access to those 4 different levels, your precipitation, your perception shifts, and the precipitation of consciousness shifts, because you're more open to what's available, because you realize all of these conditions, beliefs that your ego began to identify as a real, as you, are certain filters, and whether you actually had a choice in those filters or not is questionable, right? You don't have a choice if you don't know you're choosing. And so I'll give you an example of what I mean. So when you're little, and your parent has a certain perspective of reality, which includes your place in it, and you're dependent on their care for your survival, especially for a nervous system that is like to be grounded in the world, right? We're grounded through our body, we're grounded through other people's bodies, and if their body isn't close to ours, and we haven't developed the container to hold our own consciousness, because we don't even know that we can, most of our decisions, which aren't really choices or decisions at all, because that implies that you had a choice, were based on survival responses in your relationship to your caregiver. So although it's not explicit, it's implicitly implied that my safety, my sense of well-being is dependent on that caregiver not rejecting me. Not that I know that most likely they won't, although there are cases of abuse, coercion, manipulation, emotional abuse and rejection. So there's all these levels of unconscious forces that are working on us that determined our sense of reality and the actions that we took and the beliefs that we took on for ourselves in a very limited context. So, for example, if you're living in a household where your physical safety was taken care of, you were fed, you were clothed, but your emotional reality was ignored or invalidated, that can be very, very harmful to your sense of emotional safety and well-being, which of course triggers you into fight, flight, or freeze, your nervous system. And when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, that affects your ability to fully develop, because it's like part of your nervous system starts putting a brake on. And so it's like, whoa, right? If part of my consciousness is in freeze, it's really difficult for me to learn and grow at the rate that's actually possible for me. So this happens unconsciously, right? The brain, the mind, the ego protects itself. And part of the protection is not being conscious that your reality was created, your mind created a story about reality that would help it have a sense of control, even though the story wasn't accurate. And then these stories, as bits of information, get stored in our nervous system energetically as patterns of belief. And then as we grow and develop, we continue to live into those patterns because they're biochemical signatures, especially if they were put into place under when we were under strong emotion, right? Emotion helps record those memories in our nervous system. And so, of course, people that know this, for example, advertisers know that how to elicit a strong emotional response through images, words, and that's why it's called programming, right? Because it is eliciting these unconscious drives in you. And as I've said, is if we're not consciously driving our own chariot or our own ship, then it can be hijacked rather easily, especially in moments of when we go unconscious. And usually we go unconscious when we are experiencing pain, and pain has anything to do with a time in your life where your nervous system wasn't able to process or contain an experience. And so part of your brain goes unconscious in order to survive the experience. And unless you have highly evolved, or you had highly evolved caregivers, it's a very difficult to learn how to process those unexpressed emotions in a healthy way. And then there's a greater and greater disconnect between my perception of events, my thoughts, my perceptions, and then my actual feelings and psychological responses. Because that safety mechanism of amnesia or going unconscious is there, again, to protect you as a safety device, but it's not necessarily keeping you safe if you're going unconscious, because you can't be present, and when you're not present, you can't be at choice. And so this is why you'll may have had this experience or witnessed somebody being triggered and then having an emotional reaction where it's almost like they have a shift in personality, like they're possessed or they are overtaken by an energy that's not in their conscious control. And then afterwards, they don't remember what they said, they don't remember what happened, or when you ask them about, they don't know what you're talking about. Or there's this sense of, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I did that. I just got caught up. in the moment. I got caught up. And so it's these unconscious responses that we're acting out under the level of consciousness a great deal of the time. And so as an integrative awareness coach, what I'm really trying to do and what I'm committed to in my own self-healing journey and then with my clients is to reconnect the belief systems, the thoughts, with the emotions, and then correct any corrupted version of reality that was installed, that keeps replaying, that causes people suffering and a disconnect from their own life in order to get the results and experiences that they truly long for. And so this is all a process of remembering or rediscovering that we are not merely a physical body with a brain, but there's many different levels of consciousness, and that when we start living out of the gross basic level, that we're actually stripping away the richness of our humanity. And I understand why that there's an impulse to do that, because this unity thinking that religion, for a large part, has been charged of, has also abused it in order to control groups of people out of fear, of using fear to control people. And it's also done lots of good things also, so don't get me wrong. But unless we can address that shadow underneath it, people will continue to be repelled by it, because it's not conscious of its own self. So it's like the mind or the ego appropriated this unity consciousness, not for true unity consciousness, but to manipulate and control so it could get its vision, not what it really is, but its concept. And the concept is never the thing. So it's always a disconnect. It's always a pushing away of what it actually is, true joy and bliss and heaven on earth, right? Heaven on earth, the idea that you can connect the highest awareness with the grossest level, and you can find balance in a healthy way to unite these two seeming opposites, and not in another life or after you leave this body, but here now, right now, at this moment. And what it's going to take is us giving up all this false belief that these false ideas of our limited like little human self, and to step into the full power of all aspects of our consciousness as creator beings. And so that's what I'm going to be doing, sharing with people in my 3-part workshop entitled The Power of Self-Awareness, coming up this month, next Wednesday. So that's 3 days from now, September 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, 3 consecutive Wednesdays. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the construction of the nervous system, consciousness, and then looking at how this architecture can be used intentionally to empower us, instead of crippling us or creating a self-sabotage of taking, 5 steps forward and 3 steps back all of the time. So I hope you can join me. I'll put the link in to register below this message. And if you're seeing this on Instagram, it'll be in my bio, the link. So I hope you can join me. I hope you guys are having a fabulous Sunday. And I'll see you real soon. Until next time, you remember, please, what a valuable treasure you are. Bye for now.